Welcome to The Recovering Perfectionist, where you'll learn all the hacks you need to get started and finished on your business or project. You'll connect with successful entrepreneurs who are in perfectionist rehab, unapologetically experimenting and balancing life, business, family, and me time. I'm your host and Chief Recovering Perfectionist, Claire Barton. Hello, Recovering Perfectionist. It's Claire Barton, and I have got Caroline McGraw here today with me, who is a super duper, stellar, amazing recovering perfectionist. She's also a writer and a speaker, amongst many other things, and she's coming to us live from America. So I'm feeling pretty international today to have you on. Hi, Caroline. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Claire. Thank you so much for having me.
It's so great to have you here. So I'll hand over to you in a second to tell everyone a bit about who you are and all of that sort of thing. But I just want to start it off by saying we totally bonded several months ago in my group, The Recovering Perfectionists, in Facebook.
Yes.
When you started posting a lot about the work you were doing and your book and everything about The Recovering Perfectionist, I was like, oh my God, we're a match made in heaven. We've got very, very similar messages and styles and all of that sort of thing. So I'm really glad to have you come on and speak purely about recovering perfectionism and all the things that are kind of, entailed in all of that sort of thing. But before we go and talk about that sort of thing, do you want to tell us all a bit about you and your biz journey and what you do and all of that sort of thing?
Absolutely. Sure. And I'm thrilled to be here as well, because when I found your Facebook group, I just thought, oh, this is so sweet. There's a kindred spirit across the globe who's doing such similar work, and felt that instant connection. And knowing that there was a show called The Recovering Perfectionists was just brilliant. And when you said, would you like to come on? It was, how could I not come on, of course. So yes, what I do is something I call getting past perfect and rising up real. So in my work as a writer and a speaker, I tell stories from my life, personal, memoir-driven kind of stories, in hopes that it will encourage other women to not be so afraid of their faults, really. That's the main thing. Because so often when I write these stories, I do feel that self-consciousness of, oh my goodness, what if I write this and people think I'm crazy and it's just me? And then over and over, what I hear is, me too, I struggle with this too. So it's putting those stories out into the world. And the story I usually tell to kind of encapsulate, where did the name come from? Like, people ask me, your blog is called A Wish Come Clear. What's that all about? I don't understand that. And it's a play off of the cliche, a wish come true. But my younger brother actually made up the phrase, a wish come clear. And his name is Willie. He's really smart. He's really funny. And he's also on the autism spectrum. So his mind works a little bit differently than most people. And when he was younger, he thought the funniest thing in the world was to make a purposeful mistake. So he knew that the phrase is a wish come true, right? But he would say, oh, it's a wish come blue, or it's a wish come purple, or a wish come clear. And he would laugh hysterically like that was the funniest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And so when I started my blog, I was working as a special needs caregiver, and I named it in his honor because he was the reason I got into the field.
Wow.
But later I realized, oh my goodness, this is actually a blog for recovering perfectionists, for people who are really struggling to accept themselves. And so the title became fitting in a whole new way, because it is an intentional mistake, and it's embracing the humanity and the fact that we all make mistakes, and that we can learn from them, and they can not be always a source of pain, but a source of growth and a source of learning.
Absolutely. That's an awesome story. I had no idea about that. So thank you so much for sharing. That's really cool. Sure. And it's really interesting to hear little stories about that, like how people's names came about and how people kind of started to get into things. It's really, really interesting to me. Often people ask me the same sort of thing, and I kind of go off on some ranty tangent about recovering perfectionism for myself as well as for people around me and all of that sort of thing, and how I've found it really frustrating. But yeah, it's really interesting. So in terms of what you talk about with perfectionism, does that kind of cross all parts of people's lives, like their work and their family and their homes and their relationships? Like, what is there a part of perfectionism that you particularly focus on, or is it kind of a across the board sort of a thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I certainly resonate with stories of people talking about, here's how I overcame it at work, or here's how I'm dealing with it in my home life. But for me, my own struggle is, it's less about, I can live with dust bunnies on the floor. I don't really mind that so much. I'm okay with it. But it's more about the internal dialogue and the relationship with myself and the relationship with others. So I think that's really the big focus, is how do I talk to myself? How do I relate to myself? How do I relate to others? When I make a mistake, when I drop something on the floor, my split-second reaction is often still to shame myself of, you're so stupid, you're so clumsy, how could you do that? And so a lot of the work has really been taking pause in those moments and being, wait a second, how do I want to be speaking to myself? Right, and adjusting that dialogue.
Yeah, I think something that's really relevant that seems to be, I don't know, doing the rounds on social media lately in the last couple of months is that whole, if you were to speak to your best friend the way that you speak to yourself, like, and no, everyone just shakes their head like, no, I would never do that because I love my best friend. You're like, oh, this is the point. But it's easier said than done. So do you call yourself a recovering perfectionist? Are you someone who used to be very perfectionist about that? Can you tell us a bit about what kind of got you from that side of the fence to on the fence, at least to being recovering? I always say there's an ing on the end, not an ed on the end.
Oh, I love that. Yes. Yes. Actively in recovery from perfectionism, recovering the verb. Yes. Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think it would be the same thing that would bring anyone to that place of that you're in enough pain with the way things were, that you're suffering enough from the way you've always done things, that you become willing to make a change. And that was certainly the case for me. I did not have the language for it back in the day, but from a relatively young age, I was dealing with depression and anxiety, some panic attacks. I didn't know that that's what these things were. I thought, this is just something's wrong with me. I don't know what this is. And eventually growing up, life kind of pushed me to that breaking point of realizing I need to learn to take better care of myself and not demand this unrealistic standard, or I'm just going to completely fall apart. There's just going to be nothing left. And I think for me, where the journey really started in earnest, well, I can point to two moments, actually. I can point to the moment when I knew I had a problem. I know that. And I can point to when I started to make a shift. So the moment I knew I had a real problem was I got into a car accident on the way to high school. And thankfully, the car was totaled, but I was okay. The other people in the other car were okay. Yeah. It could have been a lot worse, and I'm very thankful that I, got through it. But it was really scary. It was a head-on collision. It was, airbags, the police, the whole 9 yards. And I was, hyperventilating by the side of the road. I'm shaking. It was really scary. But by the time I reached my parents, I demanded that I needed to go directly to school because I couldn't miss my third period science class. Like, I knew I would miss first and second period, but I thought, my grade it's not quite an A yet in biology or whatever it was. Yeah. And I can't miss it, because if I miss it, I will have messed up even worse. And so my logic was, I've already messed up so badly by getting in this car accident that I can't mess up worse, even though I'm clearly, traumatized and should not have been in school. But I was so insistent that my parents were like, well, we don't think it's a good idea, but we're going to let you do what you're going to do. And I remember in that moment thinking, I don't think this is right, because I never would have asked another person to do that. Sure. Like you were saying with your best friend, my God, if my best friend were in a car accident, I would be like, take care of yourself. Don't
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
right, exactly. Oh my goodness. That's when I knew I had some issues around perfectionism
Mm,
and needing to prove my worth and
yeah.
needing to have perfect grades or else I wasn't okay. And I think the point at which I really started to recover was my first job after college was as a live-in caregiver for adults with special needs. And it was so powerful because it was one of the first times in my life where I started to really relax into the feeling that, wow, I think these people love me no matter how much I achieve. I
Mm,
think, and because that's how they related to each other. It wasn't about, how much can you get done in a day? It's just, oh, here's this person. How lovely just to be with you,
yeah,
And it was
yeah,
very simple and very pure and very not what I was used to in my mind.
yeah.
And so with them, I started to realize, wow, they're not judging me every second like I'm judging me. And what if I could approach the world the way they do? So I think they really started teaching me how to be less afraid.
Amazing. And I think a lot of people who I've spoken to about the perfectionism thing, there's often been a catalyst that has made them go, oh my God, what am I doing? This is not right. This is not how I want to live my life or whatever. And sometimes it is a traumatic event. Sometimes it's a big life change, like moving
Mm-hmm.
house or moving to a new place. And often it's becoming a parent or something like that
Yep.
where you just go, and that was definitely true for me. Like I would say that was my number one kind of thing. Like I've definitely had points in
Mm.
the past where I've gone, oh my God, I'm obsessing about this. Why am I doing 80 hours and only getting paid for 40 of them? Why am I the first one to get here and the last one to leave just so I can make sure that, why do I clean for the cleaner so that their job's easy? Like all that sort of thing, I knew that there was some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I checked it a bit, but not as much. But then when I had my first child, I was literally one of those ignorant people who said things like, no, my life's not going to change when I have a baby. They can fit into my routine. They can fit into me. Like, I was the most
Yep.
amazing
Yep.
parent before I had children. Yeah, one of those. And I'm totally high since then. And I remember, and people who listen to the show will probably have heard me say this before, that I remember there was a point, and I'm looking at my couch now because I'm literally right over there. And I was sitting
Okay.
there, and every time I'd sit down to feed, it was the time of year that he was little and I was feeding him. The sun would come through the window at about 4 o'clock, which was always when I was sitting on the couch for like 2 hours straight feeding or whatever. And the
Okay.
sun would come through the window at that time of year and hit the TV cabinet and the dust that sat on it and all that sort of thing. So like you were saying,
Ah,
the dust bunnies
yes.
killed me. Like I would sit there and every single day I'd go, oh my God, I still haven't
Mm.
dusted that thing yet. I still haven't dusted that thing yet. And I remember sitting there one day just in tears going, I've got all this stuff to do and I've done 5 loads of washing today, but I still haven't even dusted a
Yeah.
thing. Like how ridiculous. It's just a bit of bloody dust. It's not killing anyone.
Yeah.
And it would have been 4 or 5 weeks. And I just thought, God, Claire, get your priorities straight. Like you've got this beautiful baby.
Mm.
There's so much other stuff going on. Don't worry about the bloody dust. And that was for me just going,
Yeah.
okay, I either need to ask for help or accept help for all these people who are offering. And when they
Mm.
say, and I'm such a big thing about this helping thing. And I definitely used to be one of those kind of a bit more stoic and a bit like, I don't need help. I'm okay. I can do it by myself, until I started asking for help and accepting help and realizing how much joy I got when someone actually let me help them. I was like,
Yes.
oh,
Yes.
okay, that's actually a thing. Like if I say, and I've stopped saying, can I help you? I just say, how can I help? Or I'm going to help you by da 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 da. Is that cool?
Yes.
Actually
Yes.
make a decision so that people don't have to feel that uncomfortableness about asking for help or whatever.
Mm.
But yeah, I think that's a really big thing, and it is often some sort of catalyst that happens in our lives that make us just check in with our actual priorities and our actual values and things that actually matter in our lives and our relationships and all of that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's a really cool story. So
Thank
tell
you.
me, once you kind of worked out that there was more to life than getting great grades and going to science class after car accidents and all that sort of thing.
Yes. Yes.
What did you do? Like, how did you turn it around? Was it a kind of instant, right, I'm stopping doing all those things and I'm starting doing all these things? Or is it a gradual kind of work in progress?
Definitely a work in progress, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
I can point to another moment where I felt this sense of kind of the relief and the expansion that you were describing when you looked at that same old TV cabinet. I think that's a really actually good way of thinking about it. It's being able to look at the same circumstance through different eyes, you know, and like remembering to put on the glasses. Like one of my favorite writers, Anne Lamott, has this whole thing about heaven is just a new pair of glasses. So it's the whole idea of how often do I remember to put on the glasses that allow me to see clearly, and how often do I stumble around blindly, you know, hurting myself, hurting others, bumping into things, whatever. But the moment that I felt that kind of relief and loosening, I was still working as a caregiver, and I was trying to decide whether or not to start dating the man who became my husband. So obviously I did, but at the time I was very, very conflicted about it because I had a lot of beliefs about it's super irresponsible to date a coworker because he worked with me, and I can't let myself fail in this way. I can't set myself up to get hurt in this way. I'll be letting everyone else down. I'll be letting myself down. It's just this big tangle. And in the midst of this, one of our other coworkers sent me this email, which perfectly ties into your idea of, you know, sometimes it's these small interventions that can be dramatically helpful from other people. And he had no idea what I was mulling over in my head, but he sent me this message that was a reflection about how in Native American craftsmanship, so in the North American tribes, some of them would weave in a purposeful mistake in their blankets or in their like baskets or crafts. And the idea was that this misstitch or this purposeful mistake was the place where spirit moved in and out of the fabric. And so this whole idea of embracing your imperfections and embracing your humanity as opposed to constantly running from them, and that's part of the art and that's the access point for spirit or for the divine. And I just read that email and I had chills. I was like, the universe is trying to tell me something.
I just do that right now. I literally, my hair is standing on my head. I've got so many goosebumps on my skin. Goosebumps on my goosebumps. It's amazing. I love it. I think I've heard something similar. You went in a direction that I thought you were going in a different direction, because I think I've heard something similar about, maybe it's a quilting thing where they do it like a mismatched piece of material, or they turn it around the other way or something like that. And so there's always one thing on a quilt, not all quilts, but one thing on like those big quilted quilts where it's the wrong way around, so that it's like the signature, like you'd have a signature on a painting or something. It's that unique kind of point of difference. So
I like that.
But that's really beautiful as well. And I think I really love the basket, like the purposeful mistake. I think that's really awesome as well. And I totally agree with the creativity. Like if I use that as an analogy about the things that I talk about in coaching and that sort of thing, is that if you give yourself the permission to fail and to experiment and to make mistakes and stuff up and own it, you actually leave so much more room for creativity. If you're not always worried about the end product and you're not completely wedded to everyone loving you and loving it just because you made it, you're actually, the creativity is just out of this world. Like you actually give yourself permission to stop doing it for the wrong reasons and to actually sort of live up here rather than in here. So yeah, I totally love that. And a couple of other things about what you were saying about dating a coworker and all of that sort of thing. I think there's a few things like you mentioned about letting other people down and all of that sort of thing. And I think that's a really big thing, that people who are perfectionists are very conscientious. They care about what people think, unfortunately, and a lot of our motivation is to impress people or to gain the approval of people and that sort of thing, which is really sad. And I don't know if it's a societal thing or an internal thing or a family thing. It's probably a bit of that nurture versus nature kind of debate. But yeah, it's a really powerful thing to kind of let go of. And I think
there you go.
My dog banging at the door. Like you were saying, I told you before I was going to do that. That when you were saying with the relationship thing, that often when we're not willing to commit, and we're making all these excuses or reasons in our head about why we shouldn't, because, you know, there's a policy somewhere about not doing that and it'll be frowned upon and I might not get the promotion and What it actually is probably avoidance of being embarrassed or looking stupid if you date them and then it doesn't work. And it's all like often perfectionism, not always, but often, excuse me, it seems to come down to, like avoidance of being embarrassed or failure or fear of something.
Yes.
So if you don't do it, then you can't get hurt by it. If you don't start a relationship, you won't get hurt when they break up with you. If you don't take that job, then you won't be embarrassed when you don't actually know what to do when you get there on your first date. Like all of those sorts of things. And I think it's just so interwoven with absolutely everything. But yeah, it comes back to that imperfect action, and I'm completely in love with this purposeful mistake thing. That's totally going to become a theme for me now.
Oh, good.
Like, I use the hashtag fail fast quite often. Like, try and go out there and try and make a mistake. Try and do something. A business mentor of mine, she and her partner did a thing. I can't remember who ran it, but one of the challenges was to go out and get comfortable with people telling you no.
Yes.
So the challenge was something like going to a coffee shop, like going to a Starbucks and ask for a discount on your coffee. They're going to say no. They're not going to give you a discount.
Right. They don't do that.
To the shop. That's not a thing. But actually having the guts to ask that, knowing that the answer is going to be no, and then be told no in a fairly public way is really uncomfortable. But if you can get okay with being uncomfortable, it won't be so uncomfortable. It's kind of the same thing, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And that is such a prerequisite for being a writer. It's being willing to pitch your stuff and put it out there with the understanding that 98% of people are going to say, no, thank you, it's not for us. Yeah. And it does get easier with practice, even though it stings, for sure.
Yeah. And what about in the other way around? I'm really interested when I had a conversation with someone else about this recently, about the power of saying no to other people.
Yes.
So, and that's with everything. So I also use, recovering yes person, recovering yes girl, recovering people pleaser, all interchangeably. It's all the same sort of thing. So I was the sort of person, and I still do kind of have the attitude of, if you want something done, ask someone who's really busy. And I'm always really busy. So it's up to me because I will get it done. I'll kill myself in the meantime and do 20 hours a day and, all of that sort of thing. Not so much anymore, but definitely still have a bit of that sort of thing. But this whole, especially when you're in business for yourself and we get to that point of overwhelm and burnout and almost resentment very quickly, because we do say yes to everything and we're scared shitless of saying no to someone because it might mean that they don't like us anymore, or that means that we don't get that bit of income that month or whatever. But I have to say, the first time I said no to a potential client in my business, I was devastated. It was someone I really, really wanted to work with, someone who I admired, and I was completely flattered and almost a little bit taken aback when she contacted me to say, can I chat about your offer or whatever? And then we chatted and we talked about it, and I said, I don't think I can actually help you. I think you need someone who's in front of even where I'm at, because you're in front of where I'm at, and I'm just not the right person. And I was devastated. I think I got off the phone and I had a little cry, because I was like, I really wanted to work with her, but I knew it wasn't the right thing, and I knew it just wouldn't have been right for either of us. But it was also like, I can say no, and the world didn't completely implode, and people are still contacting me who I do want to work with, and I can work with, and I can help. Oh, that's okay. Or there's, people who you talk to who think you're just going to take too much of my energy, and I just can't. It just can't, because as soon as you do that, it's like that one door closes, 5 million more open. It's always the way that when you kind of, and I talk about this a lot in the show as well, when you say yes to something, what are you saying no to? And when you say no to something, what are you saying yes to? So it's that whole kind of, being okay with being told no, because it wasn't the right energetic alignment anyway. But it's also okay to say no to people. And the same as with, people who are asking for free stuff, or, we've all got those friends who are always contacting you and saying, can I just pick your brain? And 4 hours later, everything they came for, and you're completely exhausted. And it's okay to actually say, no, I can't do that right now. Or no, I can't stop at this shops on the way home and get you an ice cream. Like, no, it's okay to say no, to look after yourself, and to, make sure that you're looking after your own dreams. And you can do that in a way that you're not being a bad person. That's totally not a thing. I'm a big fan of Sarah, I want to say Sarah Knight, but I might be saying the wrong name there. Sarah Knight's book, oh, I can't even think what it's called now. The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck. And it's,
Oh, I
have you
haven't
read
read
it?
it, but it's on my
Oh,
wish list. I want to read it.
seriously, game
Yes.
changer. Just the way that she
Okay.
talks about how you can actually say no, and, you know, kind of make sure that you're doing things for yourself. And obviously not being an asshole about it, but you can totally,
Mhm.
it's totally okay to not be all things to all people all the time, everywhere, every
Yes.
day, you know,
Yes.
for the sake of pleasing everyone else. It's really cool. You should definitely read it. I'm a big
Oh,
fan.
thank you. Yes, it's on my Amazon wish list. So now I'm motivated to move it
Excellent.
up higher.
Well, I actually listened to it on audiobook, so I got to hear her voice for the whole thing, and she's obviously
Ah,
super passionate about it. She does lots of
yes.
TED Talks too. There we go, just a little plug for her. Go and check
Yeah,
her out.
yeah.
But yeah, she does lots of TED Talks, so you can get it in little 11-minute snippets as well, which is kind of cool.
Yes.
Cool. Well, so where are you at now in your recovering perfectionist journey? And congratulations on the nuptials, by the way.
Oh, thank
Obviously
you.
went very well.
It did. It did. It was a good risk to take. Yes.
Excellent.
Yes. Yeah, I think right now I could really relate to what you were talking about of the struggle to say no and to realize that it's okay to keep some of your time or your energy or your money or whatever it is for yourself. And I know that I've come a long way in that because I can look back at things I've done in the past and just think, oh my gosh, what was she thinking? But that was just the beginning of that journey. And now, I can see ways in which, okay, I do still struggle with not giving away 100% to everyone, whoever asks, or having some energy left at the end of the day can be scary for me because I'll think like, does this mean I didn't give enough? Like I'll have
Yeah.
anxiety about it. But actually I realize, wow, if you have energy left at the end of the day, it means you don't wake up completely destroyed tomorrow. It's a really
That's
cool
it.
concept actually.
That's it.
Um,
Yeah. It's that
but
whole you can't serve from an empty vessel, which I hate the cliche, but it's so true. If you know, we all know what it's like when you're really sick or you're really tired or whatever, that you're no good to anyone, let alone yourself, if you get to that point. So for Christ's sake,
yes,
sort yourself out.
yes. Oh, I completely agree. And the time that I point to as kind of the low point where I was not yet in recovery, a friend had basically told me that I could not cancel on these dinner plans that we had made. I had called her and I said, listen, I think I have the flu. I feel really terrible. And she was all, you can't cancel. We've been waiting for this for weeks. We had friends coming in from out of town. There were some legitimate reasons it was an important thing. And basically she just said, pull yourself together and get out there. And I was kind of like thinking, I know this is a terrible idea, but I did not think it was okay to take care of myself over, pleasing the rest of the group.
Yeah.
So I went down to the restaurant and I had to leave within, 10, 15 minutes because I was running a high fever. I had the stomach flu. It was just a whole big mess. And I remember sitting out on the bench, praying for a bus to come so I would be able to get home. And that feeling of just emptiness. And at first I thought it was because, my friends are in the restaurant. They're not here. I'm all alone. But in hindsight, I can realize that it was actually more me abandoning myself. And I think that's been really pivotal in the recovery journey of realizing that we fear losing other people's approval. Like we're so scared of that. That's so terrifying to us. But what actually hurts a lot more is when we completely reject ourselves and we turn a deaf ear to ourselves because we're the only ones who can take care of us. And I really loved, I was preparing to give a TEDx talk about a year and a half ago, and I came across this line from Liz Gilbert where she talks about in the Chinese language, there are two different words for selfish, for the English word selfish. And one of the words means to be greedy or hoarding, and the other means to do something good for yourself. But they're different, obviously. And I just thought, wow, that's kind of the distinction that I've been learning, that it's not necessarily greedy or hoarding to do something good for yourself.
That's it. Self-care isn't selfish.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I'd love to know where it comes from. Like, where do we get this idea that we have to do this? Is it from like our parents? Is it from our schooling, our society? A bit of a mixture of everything. I don't know. It's just kind of like, I just hope that my kids, you know, when they grow up, that they're not sitting around going, oh yeah, I had all this pressure and I felt like I had to be perfect. And I think, oh God, how can I, you know, try?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I can't wrap them in cotton wool, unfortunately. I'd completely love to. It's my daughter's third birthday today, my youngest. So I'm
Oh,
feeling a
happy
little bit
birthday.
emotional because I'm never going to have a 2-year-old again.
Yeah.
No, but it's good. But I'm really conscious of, you know, not setting them up to feel like they have to go,
Mm-hmm.
like go crazy to impress other people. That, you know, the most
Yeah.
important thing is that they are happy with what they do. Like I was saying to a friend recently that my son, who's 4.5, has, you know, sometimes he'll say, so and so called me a silly Billy or something, you know, not
Mm.
but for him, he's like, he's never heard that before.
Yeah.
And I just sort of say, well, he's not allowed to call you that. He shouldn't be. That's really mean. He's not allowed. You tell him that. Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. And then I thought, actually, I think I'm going around this the wrong way. So now when he says it, I say something like, well, do you think you're a silly Billy? And he'll say no.
Mm.
And I'm like, well, that's all that matters then. So don't worry about it. And, you know,
Yeah.
easier said than done. But I don't know, like, you know, we could have a whole nother conversation about that. But yeah, I just want to, you know, hope that they and everyone can kind of get over this having to impress people. And, you know, I love the direction that, you know, I don't know if it's a new direction or if it's just the world that I live in now, with so many people who are starting their own businesses and going through this journey where they're going, you know what, I don't want to play by anyone else's rules. I do want to set this up so that it
Mm.
works for my life and my lifestyle and my personality and my goals and my dreams and my family and all of that sort of thing, rather than having to go through the steps that, you know, we've been expected to. You go to school, you go to uni, you go get a job, you get married, you have kids, you retire and you die. Like,
Yeah.
yawn. You know, I just love that we're kind of getting over that. But yeah, I just think it's a really interesting thing, a really interesting world that we're kind of living in the in this age where we've, you know, we've been there and then we've gone, actually, I don't want to live there anymore. I'm going to rehab. I'm going to go and listen to some podcasts.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I love that so much because partly because I actually did go to rehab. Partly, so it's funny. I explain it differently depending on who I'm talking to. But
Yeah.
one of my clients that I work with as a copywriter is a rehab center. And I kind of went through a tough time in my own life a couple of years ago. And it coincided with when they had invited me to go and audit the program.
Mm.
And I jumped at the chance because it was daunting and it was scary, but it was also just something that I felt like, you know what, I think that this could really help a lot because like what I learned there, which, you know, connects perfectly to what you just said, this whole idea that people cope with their issues in different ways. It's like you have some people who are coping by numbing out with drinking and drugs and whatever else. And then you have some people who cope with the same issues by hyper functioning and being super busy and taking care of everyone and being like super, super responsible. And obviously those behaviors look really different on the surface, but they can have those same underlying roots. And it can be often difficult for the hyper functional person to acknowledge, oh wow, I need some help, because fewer people will call them on their stuff.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
their stuff is more socially accepted than the lower functioning stuff.
Yeah.
So I really, yeah, that was like, oh my God, this is why I feel like these people are my people and we're all really good friends now because we're dealing with the same stuff.
Yeah. Oh, so interesting. And I mean, there goes the dog again. He really wants to come in. Audience is used to hearing George in the background.
He wants to join the party. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, with that whole, you know, covering things up. And as I mentioned before, when I first started my business, and I still sometimes talk about this, was that one of the major catalysts for me was that so many people kept saying to me, oh, Claire, I don't know how you do it all. Like at the time I had the 2 kids and my husband worked interstate for 3 out of 4 weeks, and I still had a very busy social life, and I was, you know, still made lots of time for myself, and I was running 2 businesses, and you know, doing all these things. And people were just like, oh my God, how do you do it all? Can you teach us how we do it? And I'm like, yes, I can, because I got my shit together. And then I realized, actually, that's not it. That's not the thing. I actually want to show you that I do all of this stuff, but I don't do any of it perfectly anymore. Like, none of it is, I've still got the dust bunnies on my bloody TV cabinet from 4 years ago. Not quite, but you know what I mean? Like, you know, I do a lot because I don't agonize over doing everything perfectly. So I do have time to squeeze it in. I do feel like I can shuffle priorities around, and I can say no to things, and I can cancel my plans if, you know, dinner plans come up and the kids are sick. You and I have had to reschedule a couple of times because my kids are sick. And I feel like, you know what, that's my life now, and I'm okay with that. And if, you know, I think I'm so blessed to be in this position because I get to pick and choose. And if someone isn't okay with that, well, then we're not a good match anyway. And I'm okay with not impressing those people anymore. Where, you know, even, I mean, we could talk about this for hours. I mean, I went to I used to work in corporate, and someone who I used to work with invited me to their new office Christmas party before Christmas last year. And I was kind of feeling quite anxious because I'm like, I don't know what these people even talk about anymore. You know, I used to be all up on the news and what was going on, and very much about how I dressed and what words I used and, you know, looking the part and all of that sort of thing. And I got in there and I was kind of like, it all just fell away so quickly because I was like, God, this is so not where I live anymore, and I don't want to, and I don't care what they think about me. So I just had a really great time, and it was really fun because I wasn't there to impress anyone, and I didn't have to have the conversations that bored the pants off me. It was just amazing. Getting to that point was a long road. It was definitely a long road, but I'm so very glad to be there. So to finish up, tell us if anyone out there is totally going, oh my God, I totally get that. They probably are, because that's why they listen to the show. Have you got any tips, like a couple of things that you can kind of start doing or stop doing right now to start moving away from being a people pleaser and being a yes girl and being a perfectionist?
Yes, definitely. Oh yeah, no, it's fine. As a sidebar, I also really loved what you said about kind of accepting, you know what, this isn't me. I don't need to go in and impress these people. And it can be so freeing when you have these moments where you just decide just to surrender. And for me, one of these things is, for years, I thought I should cook more. I thought I should be more like domestic. And it's been a real relief for me to just be like, you know what? I make salads. I roast vegetables. I open cans. That's pretty much the extent of my cooking. And like, that is okay. Like, I am okay with not being a person who cooks.
Yeah.
Maybe that could change, but it's just what you were describing of like, you're okay with going into that party and not being the corporate superstar or whatever. So I love that story. But yes, back to the concrete tips. You're welcome. I think I would say the number one thing for me actually is to spend at least 15 minutes a day in silence and to just take a breath and do that kind of visceral realization that you had said earlier, that the world spins on without my active participation every single second. And that, to me, that's the most grounding thing to do, is just to sit and, you know, starting out just taking that step back. And sometimes that's all you can do. And then other days it's like, can I actually feel love, compassion, all the things that I believe are accessible to me, but sometimes I can't always access. So stop, do nothing, 15 minutes a day. Secondly, I think spending time with animals is incredibly therapeutic, or spending time with friends or people who can see you in that way, in that compassionate light. Like, they don't need you to be perfect. And just having this conversation with you is one of those things, because I feel like I get to just show up, be myself, and it's a breath of fresh air. I think a third thing really is to appreciate this idea that everyone's capacity is different. And so there's this reflection that I read. I'm also, as a sidebar, I'm also very into personality types and the Myers-Briggs and everything. And
me too.
I listened to the interview that you did with the girl who specialized in that, and I loved that. So I'm an INFJ, and knowing your type and having this awareness of this is how I'm made up. And so my capacity will be different from this other person who has a different type. And so kind of letting yourself off the hook, making a list of things that you're going to stop demanding of yourself. So one challenge that I've done with one of my closest friends is for every day for a week, find something that you do on a regular basis to quit. And that sounds easy, but for 7 days straight to come up with something to quit is actually not easy at all. So for me, when I did it, it was, okay, I'm giving up this one social network that doesn't really add anything to my life. It just stresses me out, but I'm not doing any more on it. So, okay, I'm quitting that.
Yeah.
And on, for 7 days, because I think with perfectionists, the tendency is if we're feeling low, if we're feeling like we need a boost, it's to do more, it's to achieve more, it's to add. And so it's really counterintuitive to be like, what can I subtract? What can I stop achieving?
Hashtag do less. Just stop doing so much stuff. Yeah. I totally resonate with that. I always think about the movie, kids movie, of course, that's all I watch these days, The Emperor's New Groove, and the mum, she lives up on
love this movie. She's like,
I gotta go clean something, and she goes inside and starts washing dishes and slams the door and whatever, and I'm like, that's so me. Every time I get stressed, angry, sad, overwhelmed, I like, the house looks freaking amazing because that's all I've been doing, but I haven't done any of the actual stuff that I needed to do. It's like I procrastinate clean, or it's like I'm so overwhelmed, I've got so much to do, I'm just going to go and rearrange the top drawer of my cutlery or my pantry. Completely useless, but that's totally how I I bust that by doing more of the stuff that's completely unnecessary. So yeah, I'm completely guilty, and I shall continue my rehab for all of this.
Good. I love that you mentioned that movie, by the way.
Oh, excellent. That's like literally, I don't know any grown-up movies anymore. I pretty much just watch kids' movies. Anything by Disney or Pixar, I probably know word for word. We can have one of those one day.
We have this in common, I think, because growing up, my brother was obsessed with Disney movies. So, anything from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs onward, we can jam about that. For sure.
Totally. We'll have a lip-syncing battle.
Awesome. I was going to say, next time around, we'll do that.
Yeah, next time. We'll do another podcast for that one. And everyone can opt out if they don't want to listen to another rendition of Let It Go from Frozen. Coming up. Thank you so much for coming on. It was an awesome discussion. I've been hanging out to chat with you for so long, and I'm so glad that we finally connected and we finally got here, and you were amazing. I love your story. I love your take on everything. Your tips are fantastic, and ones that I probably haven't really consciously thought of or heard before, so they're really great, and I know everyone's going to completely love this. So if and when people want to get in touch with you or learn more about you and all the things you do, how can they best do that? How can they get in touch with you?
Sure. Easiest and best way is to go to awishcomeclear.com, which is my blog. And you can also find me on Facebook, A Wish Come Clear, or Twitter, A Wish Come Clear. And I would just love to connect with fellow recovering perfectionists. So I would love to see you at A Wish Come Clear.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we're also obviously both in the Recovering Perfectionist, which is my online Facebook group, which is super fun. So I think probably a lot of the listeners are in there already, but if you want to jump in and follow both of us in there, and, I love all of your contributions in there as well. So thanks again so much for coming on, and I look forward to chatting again really soon.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
See ya. Bye. And that is absolutely it, my lovely. So I hope you've really enjoyed the episode. It was great fun recording that one, as it is with all of them. If you'd like to connect, I'd love to stay in touch with you. I have a beautiful Facebook group community at bit.ly/The Recovering Perfectionist Crew, with all capital TRP and C. I have a massive goal this year to get 50,000 downloads on my podcast, and I've got a YouTube show as well. So I'd love for you to help me out if you can by either subscribing to the podcast on iTunes. So if you want to go over and do that now, that would be awesome. if you have a couple of favourite episodes, or if there's one favourite episode that you've really enjoyed, I would love you to share that with anyone who you think would get as much out of it as you have as well. And while you're in iTunes, if you can jump in and give it a review, that would be amazing. iTunes definitely helps out podcasts that have got some good ratings and reviews and some really interactive listeners. So I would really appreciate your help with getting to my goal of 50,000 in 2017. The show is also available over on YouTube. The links are always in the show notes, so you can head over there. So it's The Recovering Perfectionist on YouTube. There's a channel for that as well. So jump in and leave your comments. You can watch all of the episodes in video. So if you want to see what we look like and our crazy hand gestures and facial expressions and all of that sort of thing, absolutely jump in. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel show as well, and then you'll be kept up to date when there's some new episodes that come in there. So yeah, love your support. And if you want to shoot me an email, it's hello@clairebarton.com.au. Always happy to receive your emails and yeah, open up a conversation. All right, big love. I'll chat with you soon. Bye.